Oh, hello there. Yes, well, suppose it is, isn't it? Probably all day as well. Yes, anyway. Yes. Lots of very, very interesting things from straight white males. Noticed a lot of that yesterday. Unusual, some of them. Take a look at this photograph. What's unusual about this photograph? It's the bloke in the corner. It's Rupert Murdoch, yes. Very, 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 very rare to get photograph of the bloke in the corner. They used to sneak him in through Downing Street whenever he had to meet whoever the current Prime Minister is that he's going to give his blessing to. A bit like an undercover pope, one might say. But there he is, bold as brass, the Daily Telegraph, giving us courtesy of this particular image. I guess because he doesn't own that. Anyway, who cares? We still get the same awful cant from them instead, don't we? Yes. And, we had other odd things as well yesterday. I was tickled pink by this. There was a piece from the Adam Smith Institute suggesting that, good grief, wouldn't you just know it, that they've just suddenly thought to themselves that maybe tariffs aren't a brilliant idea. And I'm thinking to myself, really? Wow, it's really strange because you don't seem to have any other issues with the neoliberal agenda at all that I've been able to tell for about the last decade or 3 or 4. But magically you're going to decide that actually perhaps that Adam Smith did have something to do with free trade. Yes. Still, Never mind. Quite astounding in its own right. We had the gorgeous and pouting Richard Tice, who was chatting to the inevitable Julia Hartley-Brewer here. I don't know, it just seems to be a thing this week, or maybe this will be the sort of flavour of the month, that the straight white males will be telling us that you can't use certain words because they're made up. So here we go. Reformed UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice criticises Labour creating a council on Islamophobia, saying, where does it start? Where does it stop? Well, it starts with a capital I and it ends with an A, Richard. That's the way the language works. This is a made-up word designed to prevent any form of debate or criticism of the Islamic faith. Well, everything's a made-up word, as I keep pointing out. Brexit, for example, is a made-up word, and that has been used very effectively to stop us having any discussions about a sensible policy, foreign trade or otherwise, with our closest neighbours. But Richard doesn't have a problem with that, of course. But one of the things that they are jumping up and down about, these important straight white males, well, the reason I'm banging on about that will become apparent in a second. But one of the reasons they're jumping up and down about it, of course, is that they don't want particular laws in and around religions to be brought in, and they're exactly right about it. But what I will point out, of course, is that these are exactly the same people who do get very, very upset at people being harassed outside abortion clinics simply because they're praying. Oh, isn't it dreadful that these people aren't allowed to go about their goodly Christian business? And indeed, they'll platform certain, well, interesting Irish Christians that will do the same sort of thing when they're basically hanging around hanging around outside schools, terrifying kids in the name of, well, some other thing that's made up, eh? It won't be transphobia, though, because that's just a made-up word, isn't it? Yes. But, of course, the classic one that we've had in the last year and a half or so is the notion that, you can't have, for example, all those nasty people expressing their free speech, key point, and we'll come on to that one as well in a second, in and around what's going on with the Israeli state and what it does in foreign affairs without it being a hate march. And why aren't there laws stopping it? Cake, eat it. No, of course you can't. That would be a made-up concept. Anyway, good to know. Tickled enormously. A thing that made me smile and kept me smiling for a lot of the day yesterday was Esu, who is someone who's well worth following on Twitter, who likes to say it as it is. good free speech, you might think. Yeah, just say it as it is. So he posted up this. What will racist white supremacist Rupert Lowe 10, that's Rupert Lowe MP to you, be enraged about today? Grooming gangs, knife crime, small boats, or DEI? Nice kind of survey there. And for some reason or other, free speech merchant and very reasonable man Rupert Lowe put up, I've consulted with my libel lawyer who believes that your comments are actionable. Remove all posts referring to me as a white supremacist and publicly apologise on your page today, or I'll be proceeding with legal action. I will not tolerate falsehoods. Yes, indeed. And now, I imagine that if I went to a libel lawyer and suggested I was going to pay him for something, he'd agree that almost anything was an actionable request because, after all, that's the business they're in. But I had to enormously, for obvious reasons, smile at the notion that Rupert, along with all the other types like Richard and, your Julia and probably your Rupert Murdochs as well, might get upset about the notion that they are racists, because the thing they get upset about isn't the fact that they're racist, which is almost unquestionable, and we'll come on to the reasons for that, but that they should be labelled as such. Yeah, I mean, what's going on when people can just say things, eh? All that free speech is a devil, isn't it? It'll be protecting religions next. Anyway, as the day went on, various people decided to crack on with it and bring in some comments. Indeed, as somebody, as Michael here has pointed out, you consulted your lawyer about S.U. Kakru's words, but a few days ago you were like, let me spell this out for you. You can call me racist. I do not care. Yes, indeed. You can't have that cake and eat it, unfortunately, Rupert, okay? You can't suggest that people can have free speech where they're allowed to say things and then get upset when they say things, especially when they are, broadly speaking, true, because 99.6% of what you bang on about as MP for Lowestoft isn't anything to do with Lowestoft whatsoever. It's to do with your party's platforming front and centre its particular racist notions. You might not like the fact that it's labelled as racist, but if a black bloke says it's racist, I'm just going to hazard a wild guess that it might be. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, as it continued throughout the afternoon, we did get, indeed, this one. And indeed, it was rightly pointed out, again from the same bloke. Like I said, Rupert Lowe 10 is racist, and I would add a sexist too. He deems only white men worthy of top jobs, deciding over all others, according to the socially engineered natural order of things. I want less mediocre white men like you, Rupert. What about you? Because Rupert had put up, if a straight white man is the best person for the role, I say give him the job. Not long ago, this was an entirely uncontroversial position to take. Yes, back in the 1940s, when your thoughts were fermenting originally, I would have thought, because of course you will notice that, of course, a straight white man is the best man for the job, because you want a man for a job. You don't want these girls going anywhere, do you? And again, these people get very, very upset about notions around sexism whilst being dreadfully sexist. They get very upset at notions of racism whilst being very, very racist. And they get very, very upset that you or I, or indeed anyone else, should use our free speech, whilst at the same time telling us that free speech is one of the most essential things we can have. Now, Rupert can decide along with lots of the other grifters to maybe crank his neck in a little bit in terms of the stuff that he posts up. But he is a classic example of a media puffed up machine, because he's allowed to spout all of this stuff because, of course, it goes very well with his base. And one might think of all of those other classic people that we're supposed to think highly of in and around the Reform Party, those straight white men, We've got Nigel Farage, straight white male, must be the best man for the job to be leader because he's such good mates with Donald Trump. I imagine that if we send him over to the States, that he'll definitely be able to sort out any tariffs that might become our way because, of course, he's such good mates, except, of course, the straight white male who's the best person for the job and who is such good friends with Donald Trump is umming and ahhing about whether or not that might be possible and suggesting that maybe we should just, be nice to him. Yeah, that's a dynamic use of our sovereignty since made-up word Brexit, isn't it? Or indeed there's Richard Tice, Mr. I can't stand the fact of the Islamization of our country, who will happily, presumably, pop off to see his girlfriend in, an Islamist country. No problems with their blasphemy or libel laws, presumably out there in and around the Prophet Muhammad. Praise be unto him, I would say, Richard. Or, yeah, we've already dealt with, of course, Rupert, but then we end up, of course, with Mr. Lee Anderson, a man who is so absolutely a man of principle that he used to be a member of the Labour Party and then the Conservative Party, and presumably if you bung him enough quids, he'll become a Green next week. Real people that we can look up to. And then, of course, there's the other one, Mr. X, that we're not allowed to mention because of issues in and around certain sexist things that he's done in the past. Best people for the job, people that we can look up to, and at the same time absolutely beyond reproach or criticism. And if you don't agree, there's a lawyer that we're going to threaten you with. I don't know if Rupert's actually going to go through with that, but I would be more than happy to contribute a fair whack to a crowdsourced libel case to see that one come to court. Because don't forget that our glorious, straight white, best man for the job, Lawrence Fox, came a cropper when a judge pointed out, not unrightly, that basically anybody would think that he was a racist based on what he posted. End of story. Still, give it a go, Rupert. After all, you are the best man for the job, aren't you? That'll teach the lefties. How dare they? Don't they know who he is? God.